Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Keto and the Chaos. This is lesson 2 of my Keto for Beginners series. Today we're going to talk about electrolytes. It's been a week. How do you feel? You've been tracking your carbs, keeping them under 20 net carbs all week long. You're doing a really great job getting yourself into ketosis. But how do you feel? Are you by chance starting to feel any weird sensations? Maybe some headaches that kind of ache in the front, maybe feeling a little bit foggy brained, just not sure what you came in the room for kind of thing, or having a hard time coming up with words? Do you have any muscle cramping? Are you dealing with any other weird, strange symptoms? If so, this video is going to help you out. I'm going to explain in very basic terms why electrolytes are needed on a low-carb way of eating. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty science about this. I'm going to basically tell you a basic reason why, and then tell you don't worry about the why, just worry about the how. Because when it comes to learning anything, you don't want to get overwhelmed. And I find that the electrolytes part of keto tends to be where people get stuck. If you have not experienced any of these symptoms yet, you probably still will. Usually about 2 weeks is what I call the electrolytes wall. People go along happy, they feel great, they tell me that they have energy, they know they're in ketosis, they're losing fat, the scale is going down, they're super excited, and then all of a sudden, bam, they call me up. I'm dying, Tamara, keto is killing me, there's no way I'm gonna survive, I'm so miserable. And that's when I always say to them, do you remember me talking about electrolytes? What are your electrolyte numbers for today? And they always cannot tell me. Because why? They are not tracking them. So the very next thing, and the very next most important thing when you're doing a ketogenic way of eating is to track your electrolytes. Not just haphazardly take them randomly here and there, but track them. You already know how to track. You've been tracking your carbs all week. You are a pro at tracking. Now, I'm just going to give you a very basic reason of why you need electrolytes and why you need to supplement them on a ketogenic way of eating. This is the basic reason. When your body is in a ketotic metabolic state, that's a sciencey word, but when it's in ketosis, your body tends to be anti-inflammatory. That's one of the beauties of this diet, and it's actually one of the blessings. But it also means all of that water and fluid that your body was retaining in your joints and in your cells, all of that fluid is going to be released. So with that fluid tends to go your sodium, magnesium, and potassium. And your body needs these to function. But your body also needs the freedom of not being inflamed. Inflammation from carbohydrates has been linked to heart disease recently. A lot of these things have been blamed on fat for so long. It's really starting to become apparent that carbs may actually be the problem because of the inflammation that it causes in the body. Keto is naturally anti-inflammatory, thus it's also diuretic, and you tend to lose your fluid and also your electrolytes. So don't go all of a sudden crazy and think, oh no, I need to pound the water. No. That'll just make it worse. You'll flush even more electrolytes. Drink only to thirst. You do not need to get in 145 ounces of water today. 60 to 80 is a good number. And even really, if you don't hit that, it's not a big deal. You just need to get enough that your body feels happy. How much electrolytes do you need? What are the best ways to supplement them? And how can I make this work in my daily life? Those are the 3 issues that really come up when it comes to electrolytes in keto when I'm trying to explain it. Number 1, how much do you need? I have multiple videos on this one. I might link a few of them in the description if you want to go back for more detail. Get out a pen and paper and write these numbers down, or go to my Facebook group. I have all that information in the PDF that is available in the pinned post. On any low-carb diet, you need a minimum of 5 grams of sodium supplemented. That means addition to any food you might eat that has sodium in it, any drinks that you might drink that have sodium in them, and any salting of your food. That's addition. In addition to that, we're talking only supplementation. You also need 300 milligrams minimum of magnesium. Some people that I have helped coach really don't feel great and they don't have success keeping their digestion in check unless they do 700 milligrams. So somewhere in that range is where you're going to want to be. Now, magnesium is tricky, and I will get into that in a minute. Thirdly, potassium. You don't necessarily need to supplement potassium if you're supplementing sodium. They're kind of like a balance. If you have a higher sodium, you need a lower potassium. If your sodium is lower, you're going to need higher potassium in order to have a balance. I personally recommend sodium supplementation, as does Dr. Stephen Finney, who I follow, and all this information I am giving you is from his website, vertahealth.com. So if you want to go there and check out his blog, he has lots of articles and research studies and things like that that show where he got this information from. I do not recommend potassium supplementation because it can be dangerous. It is a lot more difficult to overdose on sodium than it is to overdose on potassium. And if you overdose on potassium, you could cause a heart attack. So I am not personally recommending potassium supplementation. But I do know that if you choose to do potassium supplementation, you can find a balance where your potassium level is higher and your sodium level is lower. And if you're going to supplement potassium, you need to make sure you are tracking every tiny bit of potassium in every food that you eat to make sure you do not exceed that 4,500 milligram limit. So the amount of potassium you should have if you're supplementing sodium, anywhere from 1,000 to 3,500 milligrams of potassium. I hit about 2,000 a day just from my food, and that seems to be a pretty good number for me when I keep my sodium level in check. If I let my sodium number drop, I find that I need to supplement a little bit more potassium. Let's go back to sodium and let's talk about how we can get it into our diet. A lot of people have a difficult time with eating plain salt. A lot of people cannot fathom why you would ingest sodium when it isn't just a flavoring for food. It's difficult to do if you're not used to eating salt, and especially if you've been raised in the era where you were taught salt is bad and Mrs. Dash is your friend. It is difficult to wrap your brain around that. I know that it is difficult, but just trust me, if you do not supplement your sodium, you will hit an electrolyte wall. You will call me and say, Tamara, I am dying. You will. And then I will say, go and get some sea salt and put it in your hand and eat some, and I bet you $1 million you will feel better in 10 minutes. It's a lot better if you started from the beginning. So if you're watching this series and you're watching it through before you start the supplementation from the very beginning, and you won't ever have the symptoms of keto flu if you keep your electrolytes in check. The problem is that people never believe me. They ignore the sodium supplementation recommendations, and they end up hitting the wall. Every time. And until you've hit the wall, you don't realize how miserable it can be if you don't supplement your sodium. So I hope I have stressed that is how important it is to do this. I know it is hard. I have been doing it for 18 months. It gets easier. Your body handles it more. You get used to it. I promise it's not misery forever. At the beginning, it is tricky. At the beginning, it is difficult to try and figure out where your perfect way to get sodium in lies. When I first began this way of eating, I actually ate Redmond real salt right out of my hand all the time. So what I would do is I would weigh out the amount that I needed, and that was about 10 grams of salt. So the sodium varies in different brands, but most salts have about 300 to 500 milligrams of sodium per gram. So I would take at least 10 grams if I could, sometimes more. I would weigh it out on my scale in the morning into a little baggie, and I would take the baggie around with me in my bag, in my purse, and I would just every hour or so put a little bit in my hand and eat it. This got very embarrassing very quickly. People saw me licking salt out of my hand all the time, and they were like, "You are weird. Why are you eating salt? That is just weird." It drew a lot of attention to my salt consumption. It began to be an issue that I was embarrassed to do it, and so I didn't want to do it, and then I would be in the car eating my salt. It was just silly. I could have probably taken it a gram or at a time and put it in a cup of water and just shot it that way. I didn't think of that. That's probably a good way. So if you want to consume actual salt, you're going to need to come up with a way of getting it in your body that you can handle. If that means eating it like that, or if that means putting it in water, then that's what you got to do. But you do need to measure it out and track it. Look on the back of your salt container and see how much sodium is in every gram of salt. Then figure out how much you need to reach 5,000. 5 grams of sodium is 5,000 milligrams of sodium. And weighing the weight of the salts and the amount of sodium is different. There's actually a lot less sodium in a gram of salt. So don't get confused about just weighing out. Don't weigh out 5 grams of salt and call it good. That's only about half of what you need. You really do need like 10 grams of most salts, maybe more, 10 to 12 grams of salt. So if you're going to do it that way, you do have to put it out on a scale and weigh out your salt and put it in a baggie and eat all of it in a day. And that means you're going to be eating it more often through the day because it's just not as easy to eat and to consume it. But you do still need to track it. You can't just add it to your food. Well, you can add it to your food if you want. If you want to use that baggie and add it to your food, that's fine. But you still have to weigh it out and track it at the beginning of the day. You have been tracking your carbs. You have been already measuring your food out in order to do that. It's the same thing. Just consider it your lifeline. It is literally going to protect you from the keto flu. You do not want the keto flu. The keto flu is bad. The keto flu is not necessary. The keto flu is not something you have to go through to get to the other side in keto. It's not something that you just have to endure. You never have to experience it ever if you pay attention to your sodium supplementation. Trust me, you don't want the keto flu. Another way that to get in sodium that is probably the best way and the easiest way is to make sole water. And I will link the sole water video if it is not already here. I'm sorry, you can search my page. It's spelled SOLE water. I talk about how to make it, but it's super easy. You just take a clear like mason jar or plastic jar that you can see through. You need to be able to see through it. Fill it about a quarter of the way full of any kind of sea salt, Himalayan salt, whatever salt you want, gray sea salt, Celtic salt, whatever. Fourth of the way full, fill the jar with water, give it a little shake, put it on the counter and set it overnight. If you have a metal lid, it will rust. Just a heads up. You probably use a plastic lid if you can, because plastic won't do anything to plastic. So put it on the counter overnight, room temp. And 24 hours or so later, when the salt is completely separated from the water again and the water looks clear, you have sole water. Do not shake it up again. That clear water on the top is what you want. Do not drink it all. You will vomit violently. You're just going to want to either take the clear water out and put it in another container and then start again. Basically, you just add more water and a little bit more salt to that same salt. You don't have to dump out that salt. You just keep it going forever. It can't go bad. It just keep it going. Keep it going. So you can either store your sole water separate, or you can just keep it in there and measure it out as you go. 1 tablespoon of sole water has 1,434 milligrams of sodium in it, if it's perfect. I put it in my chronometer. I made a new food, and I put 1,400 milligrams because it's not always 100% accurate. So I do about 1,400 milligrams for a tablespoon of sole water, and I track it. Make sure to track every bit that I take. Now, I have made it very convenient for myself. I have bought a Go Stack container, GOSTAK. You can get this on Amazon for about between $12 and $20. That comes with 4 containers. I just use these 2. You can hardly see, my water's almost gone. Let's see if I can, you see I have a little bit in the bottom? That is sole water, and I have 1 dose left. You can see the little line on my container, and this line, I know this line and this one contain exactly 1.5 tablespoons or 2,000 milligrams of sodium. So I take 2,000 milligrams 4 times a day because that is my body's set point. Your set point may be lower, it may be higher. I would Dr. Finney doesn't recommend going any higher than about 15 grams of sodium, though I don't know that there's any evidence that salt can kill you if you have too much of it. The only thing it really will do to you is diarrhea. So if you take too much at once, you will have diarrhea, and at the beginning you will not be able to take 1.5 tablespoons at a time. So you're going to make this sole water, and then you're going to find a way to get it in you. I would start with a teaspoon, and if your body handles that, Then an hour later, do 2 teaspoons and see how your body does. If you all of a sudden have diarrhea, then you're going to want to go back to 1 teaspoon. And you're just going to have to play with it until you get to the place where you know how much you can take at once without your body freaking out. Personally, it took me, I had been taking salt by hand, basically, for probably about 6 months before I started Sole water. I started Sole water in the summer, last summer, and I couldn't take more than a tablespoon without getting diarrhea. Now I can take 2 tablespoons, no problem, and I am fine. Your body ends up getting used to the idea, and you don't have as much of a hard time as you go along. So if it's causing you stomach issues, the only advice I can give you is to take smaller amounts more often, but you still have to get in at least 4 tablespoons a day. 4 tablespoons or more on top of salting food, on top of bacon, on top of sodas, whatever. You can take salt pills if you really can't stand the salt. They're expensive, or you have to fill them yourself and they're a pain in the butt. But if you really need to do that, you can do it that way. Be prepared though that when they dissolve and hit your stomach, you will still want to vomit if you haven't taken enough water in. So the way I take it is I just shoot it and then I follow it with a drink. Now I am going to do that for you guys right now so you can see. Sometimes it does make me choke and gag and sputter. We shall see what happens this time. So this right here is 2,000 milligrams of sodium, and I am going to shoot it right in front of you. Here we go. And it's done. 2,000 in a couple seconds. Does it taste like nasty seawater? Yeah. It's salty. It's gross. Unless you really love salt, you're not going to like it. But consider it's taking like your cod liver oil back in the day. It's something you have to have. Now, you always want to chase it with a drink. Either a glass of water or something like that. Because especially if you've taken it on an empty stomach, it will burn. It will burn and it hurts. It does not feel good. So make sure you drink something with it. Yummy. Okay. The second thing you can do if you just cannot stomach it, shooting it like that, is to make up a little bottle of Ketorade. So basically what you're doing is you're making a strong Gatorade kind of thing for you. And the way you would do that is you would take a little 16-ounce bottle of water, you would drink out the top bit of it, you would put it a tablespoon or so, or whatever the amount was that you were going to take at the time, into the bottle, and then you want to use some sort of water flavoring. So the kind I recommend is Mio, just because I like it. It tastes good. They have it at Walmart for the cheapest price, and it's less than $3 a container. A flavor that tastes really great with the salt that I find that everybody seems to be, it's pretty palatable, is strawberry pineapple. The strawberry pineapple really pairs well with the salt flavor. So you just use like 2 or 3 squirts of the water enhancer in the bottle, shake it up. If you want to supplement a little potassium, you can add a gram of potassium salt, the Morton Light salt, into it if you want as well. And that's a good way to get in a little bit of extra potassium. And then you can either sip on it all day or you can just chug it. But it does taste a lot better that way. And I find that people that have a hard time with the sodium at first do a lot better taking it that way. But you still need the Sole water to do it with. It's harder to make with just plain salt, like putting the salt in. The salt tends to sink. It doesn't really soak up, and you end up like swallowing actual salt crystals, which is just kind of nasty. Unless you can stomach that, I don't necessarily recommend just doing it with plain salt. Though you can mix plain salt in water and shoot it. However you need to get it in, you need to get it in. You can eat the rock salt. You can do whatever you want. But you must track it. Okay? You must track it. When you come to me and you say, I feel awful, I'm dying, and I ask you, how much sodium have you supplemented today? You should be able to tell me an exact number. If you can't, that's your issue. A last way that is not the optimal way to get your sodium in is to take things like bouillon or pickle juice, things like that. Bouillon I don't necessarily recommend because it's carby. You have to count that 1 carb per bouillon cube. Plus, most bouillon uses MSG for their sodium, and it's not the best form of sodium. But if it's the only way you can get it in, it's better to get it in than to not have it at all. Also, pickle juice is another way that people recommend doing it. I personally don't, because there is no way to track the amount of sodium in pickle juice because there's such a variety and varied way that people make it and it's not labeled. So because you can't track it, I don't recommend pickle juice. Of course, it can help in a pinch. If you realize you're feeling keto flu symptoms and you've got to go to the gas station and get a pickle and drink the juice, go for it. But that's like an emergency situation that you shouldn't have got yourself into. You should have your Go Stack cup with your sodium with you at all times. You don't want to mess around. This week, I want you guys to focus on especially your sodium. I want you to find a way to supplement it that you can do, that you feel like will work for you, and I want you to work on getting it in. You may not be able to get in the full 5,000 milligrams of sodium every day at the beginning. Begin with what you can do. Build up to it. But you do need to eventually get to that point and maybe even further. Like I said, I need 8,000 in order to be happy. I tried going back down to 5,000 for the last 6 weeks, and I have just been retaining water, and I've had a difficult time with the scale. I don't think it's the right supplementation level for me. I really think I need to be 8,000 plus my food, which ends up being 11,000 total. It's a lot, and that's where I feel good. So your set point may be different. You need to find it. Secondly, magnesium. If you don't supplement your magnesium, you are going to get constipated. Sodium does help with constipation. As we know, it can cause diarrhea if you take too much at once. If you're having a difficult time with diarrhea, take less salt at a time. But if you're having a difficult time with constipation, take more salt at a time and raise your magnesium level. Now, there are so many magnesiums out there, and when you go to the store, about 95% of the magnesiums on the shelf are going to be the wrong ones. So I'm going to tell you really quickly, just don't even bother going to Walmart and trying to buy some magnesium because they don't have it. They don't have it, the kind that you need. Buy it on Amazon, go to GNC, whatever you got to do, Walgreens didn't even have it when I looked at Walgreens. You do not want magnesium oxide. Say no to oxide. It is only 4% absorbable. You're basically wasting your money. You have to take way too much of it to get an effect. It's just not worth taking. The second one I recommend against is actually magnesium citrate. Magnesium citrate is good if you are constipated and you need to get things moving. You want to take a dose of magnesium citrate to get things moving. But over time, magnesium citrate can disrupt your cells. It can actually damage your cells. So do not take magnesium citrate on a long-term basis. You do not want that. The ones that I recommend personally there are two of them. I mean, there are some other ones you could take, Oroate, or I don't know all the names of them, but the two that I recommend are malate or glycinate. I personally take glycinate because I like the benefits that come with glycinate. Glycinate is a relaxer, so if you're having trouble with muscle cramping, it can help with that, and it is also good for sleeping. So if you're having a hard time, some people on keto have a hard time sleeping, it's because your magnesium is low. So get some magnesium glycinate. I personally use the Zhou brand, Z-H-O-U. You can use Doctor's Best. You can use any brand. It doesn't really matter. But you need to get some glycinate if you're having trouble with sleeping. If you're having trouble with energy, you may want to try malate. Malate can bring your energy up. I know some people who take malate in the morning and glycinate at night. I really probably should do that. I've thought about it, but I just haven't done it yet. So glycinate and malate are the two that I recommend. I just buy them on Amazon. It's just easier. If you don't want to support Amazon, I'm sure you can find them at other stores online. But you want to take a minimum of 300 milligrams of magnesium a day, and you need to find your happy place where you're not constipated and where you're sleeping well and your muscles not cramping. Some days you may need more, some days you won't. There are days where I'm like, I haven't seen any action in a while. Maybe I need to take an extra dose of magnesium, and sometimes I will do it that way. If you are, just so you know, a heads up on constipation, if you aren't going as often as you used to, that's not always a problem. If when you go it's normal, then it's just because you have less waste in your system. So unless you are having actual difficulty going, then you probably don't actually have constipation. So that's just a heads up about that. And lastly, potassium. If you're going to do potassium supplementation, I recommend using Morton light salt or some other kind of potassium salt. that's probably the safest way to get a little bit extra in. You can add it, like I said, to your Ketorade. You can just put it on your food, things like that. But again, be sure you measure it and track it so that you don't overkill the potassium. There's potassium in every food. If your potassium levels are low, double check your entries. If you're not using Chronometer, if you're using MyFitnessPal, it's probably that. Every meat has a lot of potassium. Every veggie has potassium in it. All green leafies have a lot of potassium. Avocado has a lot of potassium. If your foods aren't showing a 0 for potassium, it's probably wrong. So if you're going to supplement potassium, you need to make sure, double check, triple check, quadruple check your entries and make sure they all have a potassium number listed, unless they do not contain potassium, which you'll have to look up online, because you just do not want to risk going too high with your potassium level. Like I said before, if you're keeping your sodium high, your potassium level doesn't need to be as high. 1,000 to 3,500 is easy to hit from food sources. Now, occasionally I will feel like my potassium is low. If I get muscle cramping, I feel like if I up my potassium level a little bit and give myself a little shot or bolus of potassium, you might say, that seems to help me. And so I will keep a few Zip Fizz little drink container things. I know Sam's Club sells them for really cheap. Maybe Costco does. You can get them online. I buy them at the grocery store for like $2 a piece, which is a pain. But it's just a little container of B vitamins, potassium citrate powder, and a little caffeine. So they don't taste that great, but I'll take them probably once or twice a week as I feel I need them. So you can also supplement with potassium citrate powder. I personally cannot advise on that because I do not have experience supplementing with that, and Dr. Finney does not have any information on that because he does not recommend it. I know there are other keto doctors out there that do have information on that, so if you are going to supplement potassium and you want to know where you can find that information, you just let me know and I will point you in that direction. And that is all you need to know about your electrolytes. I know that was a lot of information coming at you, but really it's only 3 things: sodium, magnesium, potassium. Track them. 5,000 milligrams per day sodium, 300 milligrams magnesium, and 1,000 to 3,500 milligrams potassium per day. Track them. This is my advice to you. I promise if you will do these things, you will try it out and you will just jump in and just make mistakes. And you can comment on here and I will answer your questions. You can ask me questions on the Facebook group over there. You can ask me questions on Instagram, though I don't always see those for some reason. Please ask me if you have a question, but dive in. You do not want to risk hitting an electrolyte wall and feeling the keto flu. You can get very ill, and I'm talking very, very ill. If you're really curious, I might pop in the video from Vlogmas where I didn't take sodium the entire day and didn't realize till midnight. You will see how I could not even speak any longer. I sounded like a drunken person because my sodium had gotten too low. You do not want to mess around with this. I'm telling you right now, trust me, just jump into it. Try different things, try different ways of getting it in, make some sole water and just try it out. You will have diarrhea occasionally as you figure it out. So thank you so much for sticking through this long video. I know it's a lot of information. I do have other videos on electrolytes. If you really are still confused and you want more information and you just need to absorb it, go ahead and watch those other ones. Feel free to comment in the section below. Any questions you might have, I'm happy to answer them. Don't forget to join our Facebook group for support, because that's what we're there for, to cheer you on, be your cheerleader, be your guide, and help you get going on this, because it's really not as hard as it sounds. It's really easier than it sounds. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this is your first time joining me, because I have so many videos still to come, and I have over 200 videos here on a ketogenic way of eating. I have videos on everything that I eat in a day, and I have 27 videos that have a week's worth of eating, at least a week's worth of eating. I think I have actually been filming my food for over 30 weeks and putting it on this channel. So I have a lot of information here. So if you're just coming to my channel, please subscribe, hang out with us, become our friends, join the keto community. We love you so much. We're so grateful for you. I am so grateful for your support of my channel. I am so grateful for your support of me as a person. I am just a mom. I am not a nutritionist or a doctor or a scientist. I'm just a person who's good at absorbing information and then sharing with people in a way that people can understand. And that is just, it's been a dream come true being able to teach you guys. I have learned so much. And just teaching you guys has actually helped me in other areas of my life, teaching with homeschooling and that kind of thing too. It's been such a blessing to me, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I appreciate each and every one of you. I read every one of your comments. I try to respond as much as I can. I love all of you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. Join me next week for lesson 3, which will be macros. And you really want to know about macros if you want to lose fat on this way of eating. Don't forget the live chat tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. If you have any questions for me, bring them to the live chat and I'll be happy to chat with you on live video. Thank you, my friends. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you again soon.